All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Tonight we're doing a deep dive into the Jack the Ripper case.
Fascinating choice.
We got all this information from Wikipedia about the murders and the
Read
investigation.
all the theories, right? There's so many.
Yeah, and to understand it all, we really need to, picture ourselves back in 1888.
Back in time.
Yeah, in Whitechapel, this district in London's East End. It was, overcrowded.
Really rough part of town.
Yeah, impoverished, lots of violence, prostitution. Wikipedia says there were like 62 brothels
62, wow.
and something like 1,200 prostitutes.
Just in Whitechapel.
Yeah, just in Whitechapel alone. It's important to remember this context. Right?
Absolutely, you can't separate the crimes from the setting.
Right. It's not just some, backdrop for a crime story.
It was real life for all these people.
Exactly. And they were dealing with so much, poverty, social unrest.
The feeling that nobody was really looking out for them.
Yeah, like remember Bloody Sunday in 1887? That demonstration that turned violent?
Oh yeah, things were tense.
Yeah, it shows, this tension just brewing under the surface in Victorian London.
Yeah, like a powder keg.
And then into this already volatile situation.
You've got Jack the Ripper.
Enters Jack the Ripper.
The name everyone knows.
And the thing is, we still don't know exactly how many victims he had.
It's hard to say for sure.
There were lots of crimes against women in Whitechapel at that time.
Violence was so common.
But there are these 5 murders.
The canonical 5.
The ones most closely linked to Jack the Ripper. And I think what sets them apart.
Well, the brutality, of course.
Yeah, but also the pattern, how the violence escalated.
And just the specific way he did it.
Right, so let's talk about these 5 women. We should remember their names, their stories.
These were real people, real lives cut short.
Mary Ann Nichols murdered August 31st, 1888. Then Annie Chapman, September 8th.
And then just a few weeks later,
Yeah, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes both on the same night,
September 30th.
September 30th. And finally Mary Jane Kelly on November 9th.
Can you imagine that fear? Each murder just adding to it?
Yeah, and then you read the details about the crimes in Wikipedia.
They don't hold back, do they?
It's chilling. Each victim had their throat cut.
But it gets worse.
Yeah, as the murders went on, the brutality just got more intense.
With Annie Chapman and Catherine Eddowes, he cut their abdomens open.
And moved organs.
Yes, and with Mary Jane Kelly, it was just horrific. Her body, they could barely recognize her.
It makes you wonder, what was he thinking? Why this escalation in the violence?
Well, that's what makes this case so captivating, right? Was it just power? Or something darker?
There's this rage, this disregard for human life that just jumps out at you.
And the mutilations specifically, what were those about? Was it some kind of control?
Hatred of women, maybe?
Could be any number of things.
Or all of them mixed together.
Who knows? But it's what keeps us coming back to this case even now. And it wasn't just, a free-for-all out there. The police were actually using some pretty advanced techniques.
Really? For 1888, you mean?
Yeah. They did house-to-house inquiries, crime scene analysis. They even had early forensic experts involved.
Wow, so they were taking it seriously.
Oh yeah, they wanted to catch this guy.
Can you imagine the pressure they were under? The whole city must have been terrified.
I can't even imagine. Think about it. Over 2,000 people were interviewed, 300 investigated, 80 detained.
Wow, those are some serious numbers.
It was a huge investigation, but they were working without all the tools we have today.
Like DNA testing.
Exactly. No DNA, no fancy databases. They were basically working in the dark.
And that must have made it even scarier for people, knowing he was still out there.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why you had groups like the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee popping up.
Vigilantes.
Well, concerned citizens, they started patrolling the streets, offering rewards, even hired their own detectives.
So people were taking matters into their own hands.
They felt like they had to. The police weren't doing enough.
And I guess with all the the cuts, the mutilations, people must have thought the killer had some kind of medical knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of people thought it had to be a butcher or a surgeon.
Someone who knew anatomy.
It seemed to make sense.
So was Jack the Ripper a doctor or something?
Well, that's the thing. One of the first criminal profiles ever put together suggests he wasn't.
Really?
Yeah, it was done by a Dr. Thomas Bond. He examined the victims, and he concluded that the killer was probably a loner.
A loner.
Yeah, and possibly driven by what he called mania homicida or erotica.
Wow. Mania homicida or erotica. That sounds intense.
And most importantly, Bond said he didn't think the killer had any advanced anatomical knowledge.
So, not a surgeon then?
Probably not, which just throws another wrench into the whole thing, doesn't it?
Totally. So it wasn't just the crimes themselves, but also the media coverage that added to the frenzy, right?
Oh, absolutely. Jack the Ripper was a media sensation.
I bet. Newspapers going crazy with it.
Going wild. The headlines were outrageous.
And the police weren't exactly helping, were they?
Nope. They were keeping things pretty close to the vest, not sharing a lot of information.
Which I guess just fueled all the speculation.
Absolutely. It created this vacuum that the media was happy to fill with, well, whatever they could come up with.
So you had all these rumors and speculation flying around.
False leads, inaccurate reports. It definitely made things more complicated for the police.
Then, of course, there are the letters.
Ah, yes, the letters.
Hundreds of them, all claiming to be from Jack the Ripper.
Though most were probably hoaxes.
But there are three that really stand out, right? Dear Boss, Saucy Jackie, and the From Hell letter.
Those are the ones that really captured people's imaginations.
So Dear Boss, that was the one sent to the Central News Agency just a few days before the double murder, right?
That's right, September 27th, 1888, and in it he threatens to clip the lady's ears off.
And that's exactly what happened to Catherine Eddowes.
Well, one of her earlobes was found severed.
So it seemed like the letter was real.
It did, didn't it? But the police actually thought her ear was probably cut off by accident during the struggle.
So a coincidence.
Maybe. Or maybe the letter writer just wanted to make it seem like he knew what he was talking about.
Like he was in control.
Exactly.
And then the Saucy Jackie postcard. That one boasts about the double murder, calls it a double event.
Almost like he was enjoying it, the attention.
It's so creepy, but again, nobody knows for sure if it was actually sent before the murders were public knowledge.
That's the key detail, isn't it? If it was, then that means he really was Jack the Ripper.
Or at least someone very close to him.
Good point.
And then there's From Hell. Even the name is terrifying.
This one is different. It was sent to George Lusk, the head of that Whitechapel Vigilance Committee.
Right, and it had something extra with it.
Something truly disturbing. Half a human kidney.
A kidney.
Yes. Preserved in alcohol, the writer claimed he fried and ate the other half.
Oh my God, that's sick.
It's one of the most chilling details in the entire case.
Did they ever find out if it really belonged to one of the victims?
They thought it might have been Catherine Eddowes. She was missing a kidney. But all they could confirm was that it was human and from the left side of the body.
So another dead end.
More or less. So with all these letters, the big question was, were they real? Did Jack the Ripper actually write them?
Or was someone just messing with everyone?
That's the debate. Some people think they were all hoaxes, just people seeking attention.
Or trying to throw the police off?
Could be, but some investigators think at least a few of them, especially Dear Boss and Saucy Jackie, had details that suggest real insider knowledge.
So maybe a mix of real and fake.
It's possible, we'll probably never know for sure.
And then there's that journalist, what was his name? Fred Best?
Oh yeah, Fred Best. He confessed in 1931 to writing Dear Boss and Saucy Jackie as a hoax.
To sell more papers.
That was his story. He said he wanted to keep the public interested in the case.
And boost sales for his newspaper.
Exactly, which, wouldn't be unheard of for a journalist back then.
But even if he was telling the truth, what about the other letters? And the kidney?
Right, his confession doesn't explain everything.
So we're left with this jumble of evidence, facts, rumors, speculation. It's a real mess.
It is, and maybe that's what makes it so fascinating, the fact that we can't neatly tie it all up with a bow.
It's a puzzle with missing pieces.
And the biggest missing piece of all is the identity of Jack the Ripper.
Everyone's been a suspect at some point. Queen Victoria's grandson, some random fishmonger.
It's like everybody wants to solve it.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? What makes this case so irresistible to people?
Well, he was never caught, right? So there's this big hole, this need for an ending, for closure.
We want to fill that hole.
We want answers, and if nobody has them, we'll come up with our own.
It's human nature, I guess. We like to solve puzzles.
Especially ones this dark and twisted.
Yeah, the crimes themselves were so horrific, so random, it taps into some primal fear.
And fear makes people do strange things, like grasping at straws, looking for patterns where there are none.
And then you add in the whole context of London at the time, 1888.
Yeah, things are already pretty messed up.
Social divisions, people distrusting the authorities. It's like the perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. Jack the Ripper became a symbol for all that anxiety and uncertainty.
It was like he exposed the underbelly of Victorian society, all the poverty and violence that was bubbling under the surface.
And people felt like nobody was doing anything about it.
So you've got this mystery. You've got fear. You've got social unrest. It's no wonder we're still talking about it all these years later.
It's a story that just won't die.
It's true. And maybe the biggest question of all, the one that everyone wants answered is, who was he? Who was Jack the Ripper?
Was he a butcher? A surgeon? Just some lunatic off the streets? We may never know.
But we keep asking, don't we?
We do, and I think that says something about us, about our fascination with the dark side of humanity.
Trying to understand how someone could do something so terrible.
Maybe even a little bit afraid that there's a little bit of Jack the Ripper in all of us.
That's a scary thought. But maybe there's also a positive side to all this, like, remember that Whitechapel Vigilance Committee?
Yeah, ordinary people trying to make a difference, trying to protect each other.
It showed that even in the darkest times, there's still hope, still compassion.
That's a good point, and I think that's a good note to end on. The Jack the Ripper case might be about the darkness, but it also shows us the light.
The human spirit, right?
Yeah.
The desire for justice, for safety.
Exactly. So yeah, we may never know who Jack the Ripper was, but the case continues to teach us about ourselves, about good and evil.
About the complexities of human nature.
And about never giving up hope, even when things seem bleak.
Well said. And to all our listeners out there, what do you think? What does this case tell us about ourselves? About our own fears and anxieties? Keep those questions in mind, and until next time, keep exploring, keep digging, and remember, sometimes the most fascinating mysteries are the ones that stay unsolved.